Welcome to TriloTalk. This is a podcast dedicated to topics that we think are important to the profession of medical writing. And our goal is to bring these topical issues and ideas to the forefront and spark conversations in the medical writing community.
Hello, I'm Lisa Chamberlain James. I'm Senior Partner at Trilogy, and I'm here today with Vladimir Penkrat, who's the Associate Vice President of Regulatory Affairs at Indegene. And we're going to have a chat today about all things AI, but particularly the gap between one-click solutions and the real reality of using AI and our experiences with different clients in this area. So Vlad, welcome to TriloTalk. I think it's really important to start by discussing what we really think about the one-click future really is. Like, everyone talks about the one-click future of AI. It's such a buzzword in our industry right now. But what do we really mean by this? We're not really thinking someone's going to hit a button and a submission dossier is going to shoot to the regulatory authorities, are we? Or are we?
Yeah, I love this question, Lisa. Thanks. There's so many things that come to mind, and we spend a lot of time talking to the industry, likewise trying to shape the future just as much, not only reacting, but also taking what we're hearing from across clients and then using that as a sounding board to say, okay, this is the direction that companies are going. And mostly companies are saying, look, we need to find ways to get to market faster. So simplified, I think I would put it in that context. It's a very provocative statement to say one click, right? I mean, we talk to people and they sometimes get graded by this term because they say there's no way we would be able to use some bot, click a button. But the challenge is that some people really believe that. And that becomes a little bit of friction in client organizations, particularly where there's a moonshot. There is a dream and there's an aspiration to say, as a leader, I want to take my organization somewhere. And that's a wonderful thing to do. Think about way back when we wanted to go to the moon. JFK said, we've got to make this thing happen. And a lot of people didn't believe it. People felt like it's maybe not the best way to spend our time doing that kind of thing. Yeah. In this context, the same happens. You get a lot of resistance. You get a lot of concern about that. But the reality is organizations need to rally around this, and they need to look and see what are all those, I would call them the 1%. What are the little 1% opportunities that exist in the process, in the ways of working? Potentially there are organizations that are localized in their business process or using spreadsheets. And those are all little, I would argue, these little 1% that come together to say, we can maybe reduce time to market. We can maybe incrementally add value or somehow drive efficiency in the process.
No, I would agree with you. And obviously, as leaders, they have to have an aspiration. We need to be aiming somewhere. And with the massive advances in technology, particularly in the last couple of years, you can see why it's tempting for them to go, oh, great, let's head for this. And in our industry particularly, I mean, literally days and hours, millions and millions of dollars, not just in revenue gained or lost, but actually more importantly, speed of getting new medicines to patients. And that's what we're all in this for, really. Very few of us actually see that level of revenue, but we do see impact on patients. So I can see why, the aspiration is there for all good reasons. It just, it does terrify me a little bit when I hear this around conferences and with clients. And like, oh yeah, but we're so close to the one-click solution and the one-click submission, and I come out in a bit of a rash. But we are making great strides. I mean, our company included is making great strides in the tech side of things. So I do wonder how far we really are from it. I mean, how much should we be setting these expectations? Are we 10 years away, 20 years away, or 10 months away? It's
different, right? I mean, it's a little bit different with each organization. They've got to go from where they are to what do they want to try and accomplish. So in the realm of regulatory affairs, organizations reside around what are their submission priorities, both in terms of their initial filings to their post-market commitments that are there and the variations that they need to manage across the complexity of managing multiple health authority requirements around that, taking content and localizing that to the local health authority needs is a complexity to deal with. So these are a lot of the considerations that need to get into it. You don't just write a document necessarily once and then click submit and then say it's done. There's a human factor to this whole thing as well, right? I mean, we've got to consider that you've got to put a lot of change management into making this happen. We've been working with clients where we're seeing the road mapping to getting these things done itself really requires someone that can organize and structure the way you're going to approach this challenge and break it down into little pieces to say, we are going to sequence, for example, different document types in medical writing. And then likewise, how does that impact the organization, not only in the regulatory writing business and the submissions management business, in the regulatory strategy business, labeling, et cetera. And they've all got to come together to contribute, not just on the authoring, but then likewise in their review process of this.
I think what you said just now is really, really important and really interesting. It is about breaking it down into smaller pieces. I think a lot of people are trying to eat the elephant, and it's just impossible to wrap your head around it, let alone achieve it. So I think it is about breaking it all down into more achievable efficiencies where you can get ROI on those little pieces. And I think if you approach it that way, it becomes much more manageable, much more achievable, and you can actually start measuring some real impacts. The other elephant in the room, of course, is for any technology to work, it relies on things being done the same way, in the same manner, and in the same order, because that's how you get efficiencies and that's how you scale. And our industry has been bellyaching for a long time about the lack of harmonization, the lack of templating, even within big companies and even within smaller companies, let alone between. So, for example, I was talking to 2 different companies just today about automation of medical writing and their documentation. And one company much larger than the other, and this large company was going, yeah, you know, we can give you some inputs and we can give you some examples and you can train your tool on that. And we thought, great, not a problem. Second company, slightly smaller, but they went, actually, do you know what, Lisa? Every single study we do is slightly different. It's such a niche area. Everything we do, you know, some could be proof of concept, some could be inferiority, some could be non-inferiority. They're all different, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But, you know, there are changes, there are nuances in every study, but perhaps we can bucket them. You know, you can have all of your non-inferiority studies and maybe give me examples of all of your non-inferiority studies, and then give me examples of all of your phase 2, and we can bucket them that way. But each of those approaches come with its own challenges from a tech point of view. I mean, we're used to the challenges from a writing point of view, of course, but from a tech point of view, when you're trying to train a tool to deal with things, and you can't give it a different input and want a different output every single time, because you don't get the efficiencies that way. You don't, and you can't scale it that way. So I think every client and every use case and every need is slightly different, and you have to approach it that way and try and say, okay, tell me what your pain points are. How can we use tech to address that? And it's not just, okay, feed it all in, click a button, bing, bang, bong, there you go, straight to the RA.
And with that, Lisa, I think the other piece of this is, like we spoke about before, how do you break this problem down? I think, like you said, smaller clients, sometimes they've got very unique and very kind of fit for purpose solutions that are needs that are maybe specific to their different therapeutic areas that they're trying to address. And it's not on scale, right? So these are the complexities. But the other aspect really becomes, where and how are you going to apply the technology that maybe allows you to find the commonalities, the things that really are going to help you to get things done in those little 1% that I mentioned before. So, you know, whether you're looking at regulatory writing is one, I would argue, maybe bigger area that is really being tackled right now to try and address this. From our standpoint, for sure, we see a great potential of that, because technology and its ability to aggregate information and summarize that and present it back has really advanced on the fact that you can really use the tech, but also use it in a way that it can present information back to you, but also allow you to see where it came from, so that you're not just blindly hoping that it's spitting things out and not just spitting out random things with hallucinations, which was the big concern. So, you've got to do that rightly, though. I mean, you need people that understand how to make that happen. You can't just randomly pick up a GPT engine and start working. That's going to be a very risky way to get things done. But in regulatory, I mean, there's a lot of other areas where it's being used as well. When we look across in regulatory intelligence and aggregating regulatory requirements that exist, in extracting information about your prior submissions that helps you to organize and make decisions from your strategy standpoint on the upstream, to consider which markets and what are the demands that are coming from that are some other areas. Reviewing information as well as an ability to both pull information out and then cross-reference it are just some examples of just simplistic opportunities. And then lastly, I think I could probably go on with a lot of lists of things, but imagine taking content and then simplifying it for patients' purposes, right? So taking very scientific language and being able to present it back in a whether it's in a patient format for like a label for a patient information leaflet, or in plain language summaries, for example. Those are great opportunities to be able to manage this technology or use it.
Oh, I think there are great examples, and it is really about being realistic about where you can use AI and technology. And of course, there's a lot of technology that's not just AI. I mean, I deliberately use the phrase AI and technology because I think everyone just thinks tech and all they think about is AI, but there are so many other ways that you can deploy technology. There are lots of tech tools, and it's about using the right tool for the right job as well. And those examples you've given, I think, are great. And sometimes that's a good place for companies to start. Let's look at our processes and what can we gain efficiencies in. Everyone wants to go to the big sexy, let's have a submission dossier or a CSR automated. And it is sexy and it is doable, and we are doing it. But sometimes the smaller wins can give you great efficiencies, and it's a good place to dip your toe into the water. Again, I was talking to a client and they write 5 CSRs a year. Well, for them, just buying a point solution that produces CSRs, they're probably not going to get the ROI on it because they're expensive. Deploying, configuring a solution is expensive, but perhaps a solution that can offer automation across the whole of their clinical development program and with ancillary offerings like MLR or summarization, as you've given some great examples, then all of a sudden it becomes a lot more attractive in terms of efficiency, scale, and ROI. So I think it's about broadening your horizon and maybe speaking to people maybe like us who can kind of talk about what other things, because we see it in so many different clients and in so many different ways. We don't just have the blinkers on like this is all tech can do and this is all AI can do. I think sometimes it is good to speak to people out there, not just you and I, we might be very busy, but to everybody, speak about tech, speak about AI. Let's kind of broaden the horizon beyond just one-click submission, one-click CSR. There's so many other efficiencies that can be used instead of just that. There's so many other ways that we can deploy tech and AI.
It's an interesting point, Lisa. Just today I was looking and I was noticing that within our organization, because we're pretty broad and we cover so many different areas in regulatory, but even beyond, all the way out to the commercial part of the client's organization. And somebody had developed a solution that was looking at PDF documents and automation on the intelligence around document properties, et cetera. And we likewise look at similar things in our part of the business. So this is just an example of something that the ability to cross-reference and leverage technologies that are working in other parts of the industry really is, I think, the value and the power of this, really, that you can maybe look across and see where you can cross-pollinate these opportunities.
Yeah, I love that phrase. The cross-pollination is great. Yeah, getting ideas and inspiration from what other people are doing is a great idea. But as we both know, this is a double-edged sword, right?
Right.
And people have huge expectations of AI. I mean, our clients particularly, and particularly the higher up you go in an organization, the greater the expectation is, which can be a problem in more than one way. Where do you think, do you see in your experience the biggest gap between that expectation and the reality right now? I mean, it's changing on a daily basis, but right now, where do you think the biggest delta is?
So yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I think the biggest challenge becomes real experience in use of generative AI. I think the storytelling, we see it in the industry right now. It's very challenging where competing suppliers get out there and they want to make great claims that usually have some big round number associated with of efficiency that can
Yeah.
happen. And
Lots of zeros, yeah.
lots of zeros, exactly. So those zeros become exciting in some ways that this can be a real impact. And then the question starts to ask, where and how is this going to happen? And that's the devil's in the details, right, Lisa?
Of course.
But the challenge is just that. Is this really going to achieve its outcome? Are you able to measurably identify how and where this is going to happen? And that should be something to think about up front when you're going to look at a tech is, are we going to come with a plan up front to anticipate what the impact would be so that you're not just wasting time and money, but that you can work with somebody that actually says, hey, we've looked at this step of the process or this entire process, and we believe this is going to have an impact of X. You align to that, and then at that point, you feel a little more confident that it's going to make it happen. So these fantastic ideas, the challenge, I think, to get back to your question is people bite off big chunks. I think, again, they shoot for that moon. They think, okay, well, can it do this and can it do that? And I want to break it back down to the way I look at this technology. It's just like taking a new resource. And when you hire them, you want to put them in a place of success and you want to train them to the point that they can do a couple of tasks. They demonstrate high competency in those couple of tasks that they've accomplished. And then you're able to get excited with the fact that now I'm confident this person is working in the way that I want them to do. They're ready to take on more things, and let me now give them some new tasks. And I would argue that that's maybe the biggest challenge. People look at it as if they're hiring a 30-year veteran, and that's really not the case.
No, you're right. And I got really cross the other day because obviously I get a lot of adverts through about tech and particularly in medical writing. And this advert came across my desk and it literally said, oh, you can use our solution. And it's like you've immediately got a PhD level medical writer and they've got a PhD, not just in science, but in medical writing. And I was like, but this is nuts. This is not how the tech works. And
Right.
I don't know who'd written the advert, obviously a very good marketeer, but they knew nothing about medical writing. And I think what you said is really, really important. I think it's about a mind shift and an adjustment of attitude. If you approach the tech as, okay, I'm going to have to work with this piece of tech. I'm going to have to train it to do it the way I want things to be done. Admittedly, if you work with a company that can preload or pre-train a lot of it, that really will help and it will speed up the process. But any tool is going to need some training for you to get the maximum efficiency out of it for the way you want it to produce the outputs. And that's why I think there's a big gap in a really understanding how these tools really work and how to work with the tools to get the best from them. A lot of people are expecting off the shelf, out of the box, plug and play. I'm going to be able to hit that button. Here's my CSR or my CTD, all done exactly the way I want it. But that's like hiring an assistant off the street and then giving them a job to do and expecting them to do it perfectly first time, exactly the way you want it, without telling them how to do it or even how you want it. And I think there's a big gap. We will get there with AI for sure. There's going to be off-the-shelf solutions that will be pre-ready and pre-trained. I'm not seeing any that do that right now, despite the nutty claims that are out there. It just doesn't exist right now.
That's an interesting point, Lisa. You as an expert medical writer, I think it's a great approach to take to go to the medical writing community, because obviously this is a big area where this technology is being applied now. And, what are the things that, as a medical writer, what would you like to be able to do? I think it's happening in one direction, sometimes from tech suppliers that have no real experience. They've maybe hired a medical writer to help them with the production of a first draft, but they haven't really worked with a medical writer in the depths of whether it's a module 2.7 or a clinical overview or a CSR or even a protocol, and said, hey, where would you really want the most help?
Yeah.
If we use that analogy of a resource, what would you assign them to do and help you to get that stuff done? I think that'd be a
Absolutely
great
right.
exercise.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And I know it's the first question that you and I both ask when we're speaking to a new client about any kind of tech deployment. In both of our respective areas, we'll go and say, okay, tell me what your pain points are. And there's a lot of overlapping pain points in clients, but there's an awful lot of differences. And you need to listen first rather than just go in and try and fix things that you don't know what you're actually trying to fix for, to be honest.
Right.
But we
Right.
mentioned the outputs a lot, and I guess we couldn't just have a full conversation about this without actually talking about quality, the Q word.
Yeah.
Because this isn't just about speed, and in my opinion, it should never be about speed first. Speed is important because that's where you gain the efficiencies, but there's no point having something produced fast if it's not good. Because actually, yeah, you've got great metrics on the tool, but if it's spouting out a load of rubbish that you've then got to rewrite or recheck or whatever, then you actually lost all of the efficiencies. So we need to talk about compliance and quality compliance.
Absolutely.
And I think that, there are several opportunities to address that, but I know you're really big on compliance, so I'm going to let you go first and speak to that for sure.
No, it's an interesting thing, Lisa. I think you're right. I mean, most of the industry gets excited on the fact that efficiency is going to be the big play. And it is a very tough argument simply on the fact that I need to create an investment of people's time, of my resources that are going to work with the creation of a new process, of leverage of technology, and just onboarding that has a cost, right? So you need to make sure you've got an ROI associated with that. But most companies also are saying, look, I want some impact and value, and that's going to come on efficiency and reducing the deliverable timelines as well, right? So that's where everybody focuses. But ideally as well, underlying within there, the technology should help in quality, should help in, if you put it together correctly, the guardrails should be in place to say, produce with these expectations, and that should at least narrow the window of what you might get as an output and reducing that variability. And bound it to the inputs that are provided so that you're not going out into the World Wide Web and pulling in information that doesn't relate to your, and that's very risky as well from a compliance standpoint to have your data potentially exposed. But at the very center, I mean, you've got to consider that I could use this technology, and we've done this in our own organization. The exciting thing is we deployed not only technology for usage in things like regulatory writing and submissions planning and other areas, but likewise to enable more utility-based approaches. I can search and down select information that I just produced. If I'm the medical writer, for example, and I did a CSR, I can quickly query the system and have it cross-reference for me, and create, number one, some visibility to what was the data. Maybe I wanted to do some deep dive into that to see, am I articulating effectively the things that weren't in the first draft, potentially, to make sure I didn't miss some additional data points. And so that's always a good way to follow your self-checking. The second is becomes the opportunity where you still might want to have a quality process where you have that initial author, and you might still have a QCer that's going to review this as well. And we've had experience where we've actually developed a QC process that's still systematic and check-based and still enables the medical writer to review what they've produced as an output. In our publishing team as well, we've done this. And they can then systematically go through, review those checks, and then validate that these are actually issues that need to be addressed or not. So ultimately, you come up with a clean slate, but you also get a finalized checklist with the help of machinery.
That's genius. I love that idea.
Yeah.
For me, this is all around the magic word trust. And obviously, you want to engender trust from the regulatory side, from the regulators. They need to be able to trust the information that you're giving them. And for us to do that with any kind of automation, I need to be able to trust the tool. And you mentioned hallucinations earlier on. You mentioned you don't want tools to go out to the big internet and pull a load of stuff from there. So for me, I would want to be able to go in, and if whatever sentence that I get that I haven't written myself, I would like to know where that sentence has come from. So it's about being able to go back to
Yeah.
those sources, and that will also help with QC. It'll make QC a lot quicker. If you've got you can click on a source, and we're using the click word again, Vlad. Click on a
We're getting
source
there.
and go straight to click on a sentence and go straight to the source, or click on a reference and really go to where that TFL was. Then I think for me, that's a minimum. I would need that to be able to really trust, because otherwise, I mean, I'm a medical writer. I'm very cynical of data, or I have to have the data proven to me. I'm not going to take anybody's word for it. So that's what I would need to see to be able to trust the output. And for me, then that allows me to trust the quality. So it's a slightly different way of looking at it, but I think that's all wrapped up in quality and compliance side of things.
Yeah, and Lisa, I think irregardless, you still want to make sure that this is representative of what you want to be able to message in your submission ultimately, right? So there's a lot of rounded narrative that needs to come together in your positioning, whether it is in a CSR or even differentiated from that, a CO. So those are different, documents with different objectives. So the messaging has to come out very unique to that. To your point, I think there's a word we use, traceability. Traceability really is that, like you said, you touched on this, the link. Now, being able to click on that link, if you're able to create a system that enables that cross-reference between source to destination, and then even enable, efficiency. So quality checking, you then still have it. You have it for various reasons. I want to cross-reference, double check, but also make sure that I'm rounded in my messaging. And then lastly, if I can make that efficient in the way that I do that quality check. So using ways that hyperlink is there, using ways that I can quickly get to the section of the document that was either a reference or a data point, are all great opportunities to use technology.
Absolutely. And it's just begging for it, for sure. So come on then, let's get our crystal balls out. I always like to do this at the end of a TriloTalk. I challenge everybody to look into the future. So in this next year coming up, with tech and AI, you can't go past a year. So we're all bounded by a year. If our clients and organizations in general could get one thing right related to AI, what do you think it should be? What should they focus on?
Yeah, this is a good one, Lisa. I mean, obviously it's in the people, right? I mean, so we spent a lot of time in our own organization creating an academy and training up our talent pool, giving them access to tools to experiment. We created hackathons. We created exposure to the systems, and even gave or promoted people into roles where they were SMEs to help in the development of those solutions, which really allowed us to mature our experiences in the use of tech. I would encourage the same for other companies as well. Educate the people, give them access to experiment and promote those experiments, create champions that can help to share ideas and encourage people to share the way that they're using this technology themselves, even if they're using, for example, like a co-pilot or something in their daily work responsibilities. Obviously, there's some responsibility around that, so wanting to make sure they're not doing something that is maybe outside the guardrails. So that's also a good idea to create this community. And the second part of it, I would say, is probably governance. Like I just mentioned, deploying technologies like a co-pilot or deploying a new solution in-house for your team, doing that in an approach that's systematic, making sure that the people are trained properly and making sure that there's a roadmap associated with that, are all going to ensure that, you've got some visibility. I don't want to say control, more than maybe, an incubation process to encourage people to use it in a way that's going to help them.
Yeah. And, I know you and I have spoken about this a lot. This is about more than just finding a clever solution for a particular problem. Done correctly, tech and AI is about transforming business. It really can be transformational. I know we're working with a big client right now to do exactly that. Started off with a very small use case in medical writing, and it's now expanded across the whole of their business, which is very exciting. And I wish we could speak more about it, but we're not allowed to. So yeah, it is about business transformation, and you cannot transform your business without involving people. I mean, you and I are very much people anyway, but you have to involve your people, bring them along on the journey. And as we always say to medical writers, you know, adapt and evolve and be part of the process, really get involved in it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think I agree. And unfortunately, we are now out of time. Time always goes so quickly when we're talking about this stuff. You and I spend far too much of our lives talking about tech and AI, but
Yeah, it's exciting stuff.
Yeah.
And you make it really exciting, Lisa. So thank you.
No, likewise. And thank you so much for joining me today, Vlad. It's always a joy talking to you. I always learn something, and we always have a good time talking about tech and AI. So thank you so much for doing this today. And to our listeners, thank you very much for listening to TriloTalk. As you've heard, AI continues to be used every day and in extremely important ways, and long may that continue. And I really think it's not really how fast we can move, but actually how thoughtfully. So we will leave you with that thought. Please message us on LinkedIn with any comments or any questions, and see you at the next TriloTalk. Thanks, Vlad.
Have a good day. Bye.
You too. Bye.
Thank you for listening to TriloTalk today. If you have feedback you'd like to share, or if you have any ideas for future topics you'd like us to cover, particularly something you think the community should be talking about, we would love to hear it. We would like this to be an ongoing conversation with medical writers at large, and you can send us your comments on our Twitter feed or our LinkedIn page. Just a reminder, you can find all our episodes of TriloTalk podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, Spotify, and trilogywriting.com/TriloTalk. Have a great rest of your day.